think we should cover this tax story before, and maybe we could just play. Maybe we can just play Trump's reaction and denial, or as the press asks him, before we play some old sound of him complaining about taxpayers. So if we have that sound ready.
People know about the tax story, right? Do we have to introduce what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, let's introduce it a little bit. Basically, it turns out that, surprise, and also this wasn't because the Democrats forced him to relinquish his tax returns. The New York Times obtained them and found that, 2016 and 17, he paid $750 total, which is, I had to look at that closely. Like, I thought, like, maybe he paid, like, I guess that's it. I wish I paid that small of an amount on federal income taxes.
Seriously.
But, maybe Trump was one of the 45% Mitt Romney was talking about, I guess.
It's one of those things where you're not surprised, and yet you're still pretty mad about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is the thing, is like, yes, we should pass laws that force these people to pay taxes, right? Like, I mean, how many different times does these things happen to happen? Like, whether it's the Panama Papers and tax dodging, right? Like, part of me gets upset at how rich people are enabled to do this, and then we act scandalized by it. I can't remember who said it on Twitter, but they said that we actually might not have been that well served by this norm we have of having presidential candidates release their tax returns, because it gives them because their tax returns are so meticulously curated, because they're going to be made public. They give you a wrong impression of what rich people's taxes typically are like. Mm-hmm. And it's typically things like this. Like, I've been losing money. And there's a corruption angle of this too. At Doral, Trump's golf resort in Miami, the Times said that a roofing manufacturer spent $1.5 million during a time when the roofing industry was asking to relax federal regulations on their business. He's losing money, and his hotel has this advantage. I mean, I don't think the Best Western can do that. Like, the roofers don't care about spending $1.5 million on that. But let's play this clip of Trump reacting to it.
Likely, everybody's going to be talking about is there's a New York Times story that came out about an hour ago that says that when you came to the White House, you were paying about $750 a year in federal income tax. They are not releasing they're not publishing the tax returns. They're not showing that out there. They're saying to protect their sources. In your tax return, sir, does that sound right that you're paying a couple $100 a year in federal income taxes?
It's fake news. It's totally fake news. Made up, fake. We went through the same stories. You could have asked me the same questions 4 years ago. I had to litigate this and talk about it. Totally fake news. No, actually, I paid tax. And you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time. The IRS does not treat me well. They treat me like the Tea Party, like they treated the Tea Party.
Oh, God.
They don't treat me well. They treat me very badly. You have people that in the IRS, they treat me very, very badly. But they're under audit.
And it wasn't just the $750 for those couple of years. There were years that he didn't pay any at all, which is I mean, that's because I'm smart, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should we play the next clip before we say any more critiques? Because I have some.
Yeah, let's maybe play that next one. This is the 2012 clip, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So,
and we drive people out. We already have the highest tax rate there is from a corporate standpoint, and probably from almost every other standpoint. So if he wants to keep raising taxes, I think that's fine. But people are going to leave. People have lots of choices. They could go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, what happens? This is not going to pass today. They're not going to get the 60 votes in the Senate. But Senator Schumer, a guy you know, says they're going to hammer this thing all through the summer. What happens? Are Republicans playing into President Obama's trap?
Well, I think this is really just a populist thing that Obama's doing, and he's trying to do it, and probably it meets with a certain amount of popularity, in all fairness. It's probably, from a purely political standpoint, very good. The Republicans are going to have to be on their game. If they're not on their game, they're going to have a hard time, because these are the kind of things that are bad for the country, but they play fairly well.
And you just said fairly. That's what the president's pushing between now and the election is fairness. And yet, Mr. Trump, about half the country doesn't pay federal income tax. Is that fair?
No, it's not. And in fact, it's even more than that, as I understand it. And it's not fair. A large percentage do not pay. And it's interesting that he uses the name Buffett, because Buffett is locked into a huge tax dispute right now.
That's right.
Where having to do with NetJets, where they're trying to get close to $500 million of taxes that he didn't pay. And it's sort of an interesting thing. We're using the Buffett rule, but he's involved in one of the largest tax disputes in the country. And, there's a whole thing going on.
This is a good example of why Trump isn't as dumb as Ben Shapiro wants you to think he is. Like, the way he talks about, it might be a popular measure and the GOP needs to be on his game. That's good advice, frankly. Like, I mean, and this is where I feel like the left should have, and we were not in a position to it at all when this was going on. But, like, patriotism, right? If you want to go somewhere else because we raise taxes, go. You don't want to have access to the world's largest economy? Fine, bye. Like, that should not be a serious threat, but nobody was able to articulate that at a sort of mainstream level.
Yeah. I mean, I thought this was going to be a clip of Trump being a hypocrite, but it turns out he was saying the exact same thing that he says over and over again. Like, he wasn't talking about billionaires who pay no taxes, right? He was talking about poor people. He was talking about the makers and the takers. It just turns out that he's a taker.
Yeah. And I mean, the hypocrisy it's stark, and, we can say all the things about the limitations of hypocrisy, but to be agitating, I feel guilty writing off this PC, which I've used every single day during this coronavirus, right? Like, this show has basically, like, we barely missed a step to transition, in large part because I bought this piece of equipment. But nonetheless, I wrote it off of my taxes, and I still feel some guilt about it because I also enjoy playing games on it. I feel guilt about that. This guy pays nothing because his businesses are such massive losers, and then complains about poor people not paying enough taxes. It's very, that's psychopathic.
Yeah.
And it's psychopathic in not in the dumb Ben Shapiro, I don't know what's going on way. It's I'm actually putting my finger on these different pulses. And I still want to make sure that, I use my platform to make it worse and keep tightening the screws and make it better for me.
Well, in his mind, he deserves to pay nothing in taxes because he's a job creator, right? And because he's just special and better than everyone else because he is rich, despite owing more in debt than I will ever make in my entire life, probably.
Yeah.
But do we think this is going to move the needle in any way politically when he already told us in 2016 that he doesn't pay taxes because he's smart?
Yeah, I think we've established his people like that he cheats for them, like that they're on the inside of his cheating for them. MAGA is basically a celebration of winning an unfair fight.
Yeah.
Right? That's basically what's going on there.
Yeah.
Will it turn out people? It could. I think Obama in his prime, the way he hit Romney with faux populism. I think Biden has maybe some of that. He seems to be rhetorically signaling that. I think the Democratic apparatus is so compromised though that it really what should be a fire hose blaster at Trump is just going to be a squirt gun, and it might be enough. And look, the climate interview was somewhat optimistic in terms of where my mind's been in terms of polling, I guess. So I'm glad to hear that, but so it might be enough, but it's not going to it should be an issue where the Dems can run these a-hole business execs out of power. But because the a-hole business execs also have control of the Democratic Party, that it's going to be compromised.
Yeah. We also have to consider the Kanye factor here, right? Because back in 2012, Kanye was on the Democrats' side, and he reminded everybody, Mitt Romney don't pay no tax. Mitt Romney don't pay no tax. Whereas now the tables have turned. He's much more of a wild card, and we can't necessarily count on him to do that.
Yeah. I'm certainly, in my calculations, I haven't been rely on Kanye personally.
Yeah, saying there are many factors to consider.
That's true.
It'll be interesting to see how Biden attacks this with, I think, a sense of populism, like you were saying, Matt, in Tuesday's debate. It's just a matter of like whether or not Trump's research team can find all kinds of, awful tax avoidance on Biden's part or Kamala Harris's part as well. Like this can be flipped.
And we were talking about this earlier. We should get to the fun half, but I don't. One, they've lowered expectations for Biden again so low that he's just going to look semi-coherent, and everyone's going to think he's like on Adderall, which he might, of course, be. I mean, I wouldn't put designer amphetamines past anybody at elite level. But
no, I mean, I take them every day. It's great.
But the other thing is Joe Biden. Like people are talking about, like, well, is there going to be a fact checker at the debate? How do we fact check? It's like, a fact checker would also hurt Joe Biden. Like both of these guys lie with the absolute best of them and with their body language and their tone and their attitude. It's one of the best things that makes them one of the reasons that has led to their success. So, I mean, we all saw the way Joe Biden, like, I got as progressive care as anybody. Like, no, you don't. You just don't, man. Like he lies. So I don't know. I think Biden's going to perform fairly well. And I think he can make that work. If he can't, I'm very worried. Right? If he flubs the you're an oligarch not paying taxes, we are in trouble. But I think it's kind of a layup. And I think Joe isn't the worst vehicle. He's a bad vehicle for that when you know about him, but just if you don't actually know about him and just know him as Obama's guy and like as a personality, he's a good vehicle.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people judge these things on the level of vibes, and he's got better vibes, better populist vibes than Hillary did.